Hello.
Well, good morning. Hi there,
Hello, good
Marion. Hi, Cliff.
morning.
How are we both doing today?
Good.
Good, good. Cliff, long time no see.
Yeah, I didn't get
It's been
any
a few
sleep last
hours.
night.
Cliff,
So,
do you mind if I put you on the spot here when we get started and let people ask you a couple questions about your pets?
I am so dead. I didn't get any sleep last night, but we can go for it.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Right,
Roshan, great
Cliff.
to see you. Oh, Rakesh, right? Oh,
Yeah,
it's great
Rakesh
to
here.
see you. Oh, yes. Congratulations, man. I am so happy to see you.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the pass.
Thank you so
Hi,
much.
Rakesh.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. What we got?
Rakesh, so happy to see you.
Good to see
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Good to see you guys. Good to see you.
Excellent. Hi, Sarah. Good morning or good evening, I guess.
It's evening. How are
Yeah.
you?
Good, good. Thanks. Marion, it's been great to see you in the community. You've been getting really involved and active. It's been wonderful having you there.
yeah, so I took my CC exam yesterday and I passed it. So small achievements, but yeah, it was good.
Oh my gosh, you passed yesterday?
the CC, not the CC.
That's great.
The CCISSP, yeah. Just the small one, like certified in cybersecurity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
wonderful.
I want to book the CISSP, but I'm not able to book the voucher. So
Yeah, I saw your post about that, about it just being a little odd. Maybe hopefully that's just a glitch or something, but it's got to be exciting that you're just about ready to take the test.
I do hope you're joking about layer 8 of the OSI model.
So you don't know it. It's the user layer.
The user layer.
Oh, the ID 10T error. No.
That's great. The user layer. Nice. Sneha, I don't think I have had the opportunity to meet you. Welcome to the group. Glad to have you here.
Hello. Yeah.
Where are you joining us from? It's wonderful to have you.
Uh, I'm joining from Bangalore, India. Yeah.
Wonderful. Excellent, excellence. How would you mind sharing a little bit about your professional background and what brings you here to the group?
Yeah. I'm working as a risk project manager. So I have around 14 years experience and I'm into security projects and all. So I thought CISSP will add value to my resume.
Yeah, boy, especially with all that wonderful experience to draw on. That's excellent. Well, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
We'll give people a couple more minutes to trickle in, but we are enormously blessed to have two people that have just recently passed their CISSP. So we have Cliff. Cliff was kind enough to join us on our Tuesday session as well and answer a few questions. And Rakesh is here, who also passed. These two have been so involved, so engaged in the community. They've been showing up to study group, asking good questions. You all have seen them, how hard they've been studying. So just congratulations to both of you. So proud of you. So grateful that you'd show up. We're going to take a few minutes and we can field some questions if you guys don't mind. So I know you all have some questions. Paul, it's great to see you. Chris, I don't think you and I have met, but welcome to the group. Glad to have you here. So who wants to kick us off? Who's got a question for Cliff or Rakesh about their exam experience?
Hey, congratulations, guys. What was the heavy hitters, like the subject matter? Was it risk? Was it asset management? You know, where did the exam focus on for you guys more heavily?
Cliff,
For me,
please start.
Yeah, Cliff, go ahead.
for me, I'm going to say more just general network stuff. I was actually shocked that there's nothing on for my test. Not saying everybody's test. Anything dealing with Biba or any of those models. Nothing to do with AES, symmetric, asymmetric. Nothing to deal with NIST.
Wow.
So yeah, I was more shocked by what I didn't get.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Rakesh, how about for you?
For me, Josh, the same way. I was like asked many questions, many questions, but it was like from all domains, I can say, but not specifically to anything related to security models or anything that we were like more majorly focusing on. So nothing's that short up.
Okay.
From the chapter one, or sorry, the domain one, there were more questions for me, and I felt like, okay, generally if I am studying, like if I'm a part of an organization and I'm uh, the process and flow that I know, so I'm very easily able to answer those questions. Other thing, like two things happened in there. One was like, I passed in 100 question, but another guy who was there, he passed in 150 question. And the experience what he shared to me was like, okay, some of the questions were like totally different. It's like you don't have no head and tail of it. You're not understanding where exactly. So just use your elimination technique and just answer it. Go ahead.
Nice. Okay, that's great advice, Rakesh. Thank you. Who else has a question?
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, first of all, congratulations. Just want to know, like, how was the time management part of the exam? Were you able to manage the time properly, or you had a target like, first 1 hour I'll do some 60 questions, then or 50? Was there any like kind of rate of questions? That's a better question. Did you think about it? Time management.
Cliff, you mentioned something about just how the first, I think, 60
Yeah.
questions or something.
The first 60 questions I finished in 45 minutes. And then after I went over 100, and then when I got like 125, 130, it's like I really slowed down.
Mhm.
And I think I still finished in like 2 hours and 15 minutes. But it got to the point that those last 15 questions, I was almost like, I don't want to say screw it, but yeah, screw it. But no, I passed, and I was shocked at that.
Rakesh, how
So-
about for you? How was time management?
So I was actually I was actually gone through a webinar from this very famous company. So SANS Institute. So there they was telling us the exam strategy, how you can go. So I followed them. So what it was, basically you can focus on first 10 or 20 question more, because that can be your question for scores, like helping you to clear the exam more better, more chances of passing your exam. So that was like me. So how I did it is like I focused more on first 10 questions, 10 to 20 questions, and it took me approximately 2 minutes per question. So around 30 question I finished in 1 hour. Next, I paced up a little bit, and by 2 hours 30 minutes past, I was able to complete my 100 questions.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great.
I mean,
Roshan, did you follow up question?
no. Actually, the reason for asking this question was while I'm doing my practice exams, right, I'm scared to look at the time. So I hope that I don't do that in the exam. So that's why I'm little scared. I somehow zoom the page so that I don't see the number of questions and the time. I just so I don't think so I can do that in the examination day. So that's why I was asking this question. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm somehow scared of to look at the time.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. It's good to just acknowledge that, because you'll have that same fear in the exam. It's going to be a little bit easier to deal with it now. So I would encourage you on one of your next practice exams, sit down, make it like a test condition. Those are really helpful. It takes a lot of work to do that, because you're setting aside a couple of dedicated hours of focus. But it does build confidence for sure, so that the exam isn't the first time that clock is watching you.
Sure. Thank you, guys.
Sarah, did you have a question?
Yes. First of all, congratulations, Cliff and Rakesh. Cliff, I have seen you like going through that journey because you were just too active on the group, and you both definitely deserve this. So very well done. The other thing that I wanted to ask is that the questions. since I see a lot of the people on the group, they are focused on the questions, on the concepts and other topics as well. But questions, they are the main point of interest for everyone. So which test bank did you find the actual test the most closest to? And were all questions like worded strangely, or they were very descriptive, or were there some straightforward or easy questions as well, the way that, you know, the kind of questions that we usually see on the group as well, which are more straightforward?
Well, finishing my first 60 questions in 45 minutes, most of them were one-sentence questions. So, and I rarely think I saw a 3. I don't think I saw any 4 or 5 question or 5-sentence questions.
Yeah, I think you hit the lotto on that, man. I want that.
Yeah. I kind of feel like that.
I was gonna say that.
A lot of the Tuesday discussion was that. I feel like Cliff, everyone pray for Cliff's test. Yeah, you deserved every bit of that pass. Rakesh, how about for you? What was the comparison between some of the practice questions that you went through versus the actual test?
So I have gone through almost 2,500 and above questions. Okay, but like from different sites.
Wow.
And multiple tests. So I say from practice sets is totally different. Like you cannot find any practice set that is similar to exam. Only like if I tell you that what was there in exam, then you will be able to relate it. So in the exam, all I saw MCQs. One single answer you have to select. That's it. There was no multiple choice questions that, okay, you have to select multiple answers for the question. No drag and drop. No, spot the question. Like, no, that nothing was there. Only you have to find a single answer for the question. Moez, for me, I have also seen even no scenario question. Okay, no scenario based question. Scenario based, when I say, it is like more of you are seeing one scenario and based on that multiple questions like that. Even that was not there. Single paragraph kind of questions and multiple choices was given. Most of the questions were definitions based, trying to understand the definition, and somewhere more of like process based, like which process it is followed, or if you are studying SDLC or kind of thing, so where this process falls in, right? And some questions related to your quantum computing side, something related to your so such kind of topics were there, but all questions were like one single answer you have to answer, select.
That's great to hear. Yeah, Sarah, did you have a follow-up question for them?
Yes, again, it's about the questions. So how would you rate the difficulty level of the exam that you attempted?
I plead the 5th.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that. What?
I plead the 5th.
The Fifth Amendment in the United States Constitution is the right to silence. Cliff thinks he had an exam that doesn't quite count towards that answer.
he doesn't want to use the certification, citing it as too easy.
Yeah.
But do you think that you prepared too much? Okay, maybe I'll rephrase the question. Do you think you were over-prepared?
Over 10 years and 500 hours just this year? Yes, I definitely feel I over-prepared. And
you did 2 boot camps at the same time for a minute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Even I was part with this Cliff. I was like attending, or I joined Cliff to study together. So even me and Cliff were studying, going through the LinkedIn videos. So that was great learning with him.
Nice. That's great. Cliff, I think you had mentioned on Tuesday that the Mike Chappelle video series was really helpful for you, and one of the things you probably would have doubled down on. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, and that's what he was just expressing. I'd gone through it with him and I believe Sarah or someone.
Yeah.
Great. Excellent. So the Mike Chappelle video series, just if you guys want to jot that down, a lot of people have mentioned that. Rakesh, I'm going to ask you a similar question I asked Cliff where you mentioned that. Knowing what you know now, what did you do to prepare that you would double down on? You would do more of it next time if you were starting from scratch? Does that question make sense?
I'm not sure. Can you just rephrase me that?
Yeah. So when you were preparing for the exam, you had a handful of things that you used. You used practice questions. You might have used flashcards, studying from a book. What did you find the most helpful? That if you were starting from scratch trying to earn your certification, you would say, I'm just going to do a lot of this one thing because that helped me the most to pass.
To be like from exam perspective, if you ask me, I was at the last moment following the cheat sheet. Not one cheat sheet. I was following 3 cheat sheets, like Sunflower one. Then there was Clans one, Prashant Mohan's one. Like I was following multiple of it. And why I was following it? Because of one reason, to reinforce the topics that I have gone through, or the topic I have studied. Okay, so just to memorize some parts, and just to know the process, what step falls under where. So those things, for those reinforcement only, I was going through the cheat sheet. But to be like if I say, I would go through the book for sure to build overall concept, then practice questions where I was able to correct myself a lot, because something what I was studying and I was not able to properly understand it. The questions were able to help me to properly understand the concept. So these 2 things I would say I will be continuously following it.
Nice. Excellent.
And I want to follow up on that. Yes, the Sunflower book, I finally opened up day of the test, took it with me, and was able to read it within like 45 minutes. All of it, just cruise over it. And I think that was probably a good last minute read.
Okay. That's not something that's not a resource I have heard of.
It's on our PDFs.
Oh, nice. Excellent.
It has a sunflower on the front of it.
Perfect. All right. Well, Sarah, I think you had your hand raised. Let's take one last question briefly, and then we can go ahead and get started. Sarah, did you have a follow-up question for?
Yes. So I have one for Cliff, and then I have one for both of them.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So the one that I have for Cliff is that, since Cliff, you mentioned that you got a lot of questions from regarding networks. So is that your weak area or your strong area?
I've been doing IT since Novell 311, so no, that's my strong area. Yeah.
Okay. The other question that I have is that I'm sure you must have attempted like a lot of practice tests questions. So
Nope.
on average, you did not? Oh, okay. Okay, whatever.
I am not a good example
questions
when it
you-
comes to, well, what did you do to practice and prepare? Watch videos, listen to boot camps.
Yeah. Okay. So even if you attempted any practice tests or questions, did you score well at them also? Since both of you cleared the exam, so just trying to understand, because for people like me who have actually gone through the first round of preparation, and we're sort of like going through revision, and when we attempt practice questions, we end up not scoring as high as we anticipate or want to score at this point. So just trying to see how well did you guys do at that.
And I did the same thing, and that's why I stopped doing the tests, because my score kept going lower and lower and lower.
So Cliff's got his own alternate path there. It works.
So that's why I was looking forward to this discussion with Cliff. I was telling Josh and Vincent the other day that I find Cliff very relatable, because he's kind of like in the same mode with regards to his prep as I am.
Yeah. Rakesh, how about for you? How were your practice exam scores, if you don't mind us asking, leading up to your?
So I was like taking SAVEX practice test. So SAVEX, that came from the book, right? So 10th edition, I bought the book, and along with the practice sets were there. So my exam scores were like around 60, 80. Like I was flipping in between, like in these. So I was scoring quite in this range only. So that was there. But the other practice test which I took was from CISSP prep.net. There I was scoring very low, and that practice test was really helpful for me to to apply elimination techniques. Okay, so because they were after every question they were teaching you the process to find the right answer. Yeah, because they have a lot of scenario based questions, and so based on that they you are able to exactly know, okay, when to select which answer. Okay, other point which I would say that don't try to read too much of CISSPprep.net, because it is not yet completely ready for ready based on the 2024 exam. Okay, so they have still content based on 2023, sorry, old exam. So just if you want to or maybe there are other sites, I'm not sure, because I could not I was also willing to take Lunge app, because many people told me that it's a good platform to do practice. I could not do that, and yeah, CSSP PrepNet only for just to get an idea like how to apply your elimination technique better.
And I want to concur with that. Is like, that's how I did a lot of the tests. Is if the answer didn't jump out right away, I then did the process of elimination on what the answers definitely weren't. Then I'd go back, reread the question, and then usually that would make the answer just jump out.
That's a great process. I would focus in on what Cliff just had mentioned there. Of they're going to intentionally try and trick you. So there should be a couple of answers that make sense. Use those elimination techniques, like they're mentioning, can increase your odds. We've started doing a couple bonus questions at the end that are more to help challenge your way of thinking about the answers. We're not even going to give you the questions on those. So hopefully those will help prepare you mentally, just equip you with a couple of different techniques for the exam. So, okay, so let's kind of move towards getting started here. Cliff and Rakesh, thank you again for taking the time to show up here and answer some questions and being involved in the group. We just appreciate you guys so much. Totally understand if you need to take off and head out. Cliff, you've seen this set of practice questions from on Tuesday, so I'll let you guys pop off if you need to, but thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You guys are the best.
Last tip I want to. So the tip I would say that, okay, whenever you read the questions, okay, in the question, I'm talking about exam, may not be applied here, but in the exam, every question has some keywords. Those keywords, if you just cross check in your exam, you will find it. Maybe you are studying any topic. In that topic, it will be one keyword, okay, one or two keywords. Just see that keyword and relevant to that, just select the answer. Don't think too much about it. Okay, if you think too much, you may do wrong. You may select wrong answer. But just see keyword that is being asked in the question, select the answer and go on.
That's a great point right there. Yeah, great advice all around. Yeah, I want to pause and just piggyback off of something that Rakesh said. Of if you have a degree of confidence in your answer, don't fall into the trap of overthinking it. First of all, it might impact your time management. It also might impact your confidence a little bit if you get stuck on a question for too long. But there actually is another reason. There was a study done where if someone is going through an exam and they have an impulse or think they know the answer, but then they spend more time on a question and change answers, statistically, they're less likely to get the answer correct. It's not always true, obviously. You need to double check your work. But if you have an inclination towards an answer, just put that in your mind as you're going through the rest of them, and follow your first instinct sometimes. As long as the keywords, again, you guys see my emphasis on keywords in the questions, that will save you a lot more wrong answers than it will get you right answers. It's easy to make quick mistakes on that. So, okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started here. There is an icebreaker poll launched that some of you have already seen. We'll be using polls today throughout our series doing practice questions. So if you're new to the group, the way that we do polls is it's in the activities section of Google Meet. So if you look in the bottom right-hand corner of Google Meet, you should see some shapes, a triangle, square, circle. If you click in there, there's activities and you'll see polls. So you can go ahead in there, answer our poll. Boy, we got people wanting to get into governance, risk, and compliance. No kidding. Okay. On Tuesday, no one put that. So good deal. Excellent. Well, I haven't met a couple of you. My name is Josh. I am CISSP certified. I also teach undergraduate cybersecurity, and I work in the industry as a compliance analyst. I'm not an instructor. I would call myself more of a facilitator. We're going to go through some practice questions. We're studying and learning together. So if there's some topic or a question that you ask that I don't know the answer, I'm just going to communicate that. I've got a list of questions jotted down right next to me that we readdress later on. So don't hesitate to ask questions. I would rather us deal with uncomfortability or topics that aren't familiar than deal with it in the exam. Let's deal with it now together. So all of you have been doing a great job engaging in the school community. Thank you guys. Please continue to send us questions. I'm going to put a link in the chat right now. That is how you can submit your practice questions to us. If you use the link that I'm going to put in the chat right now, yeah, okay, that's the right one. If you use that link, you can submit your practice questions. They'll go directly to me, and I'll review those, and we can put them into a live session and go over them in groups. So if you have a practice question you come across that you're not certain why the answer is what it is, or you just think it's very challenging and engaging and want the rest of the group people to experience it, y'all have been great at posting those in the community, but we'd love to be able to go over them live here. So love to see your questions. Okay. So we are doing practice questions. That's our session today. We're going to go through the way that this will work for those of you who are new. I will hit the next slide, and a practice question is going to pop up on the screen. You'll have the question and 4 possible answers. A poll will be launched in Google Meet that has the exact same information. It's a little bit easier to see on the slide, but you'll go to Google Meet to actually submit your answer. Please don't submit anything in the chat until we get to the discussion portion. But then we'll go through it. We'll make sure we understand why the answer is what it is, why the incorrect answers are incorrect. If you have additional questions that pop up, then we can jot them down over here and come back to them later. Does anyone have any questions before we begin, though? One thing I had neglected to mention is that I'm going to use a timer. You guys won't see the timer, but I'm going to set a timer for 50 seconds on my end, just so that we can practice some good time management. So when I put the next slide up, make sure you just focus, ready to read the question. It'll just be silence as you have the opportunity to answer, and then we'll discuss together. So, are we ready? First question is coming up. There we go. Go ahead. I'm going to launch the poll, and we'll discuss in 50 seconds. Chris, welcome. I don't think I've seen you in group before. We're working on a practice question right now. So if you can hang on for about 30 or 40 seconds, I'll kind of introduce you to the process we're using. Glad to have you here. Okay, you guys got about 10 seconds. Get a couple more votes in there. Y'all are doing great. Okay. Timer's up, pencils down. Boy, you guys did great. Holy cow, you all got the question right. I'll jump to the answer right now. Well done. Ensuring the data that isn't needed isn't retained. That's what a data retention policy can do for us. So let's walk through a little bit on these other answers and discuss why they are not correct. So, ensuring that incriminating evidence or incriminating data is destroyed. None of you fell for that. I don't think we need to go into that one too much. Ensuring data is wiped, so it can't be discovered for legal discovery, or can't be restored for legal discovery. Someone tell me a little bit about that answer. Why is that incorrect? Or is it incorrect? We always know that there's maybe a correct answer and a more correct answer. Anyone have an idea?
Yeah, I'll jump in here and say that So the way that's worded, by ensuring that data is securely watched so it cannot be restored for legal discovery. Well, first of all, I'll say if you delete the data and it's legally supposed to be there, that's not good. But can it be restored for legal discovery? I don't think so.
Yeah, that's great. So the way that this works falls on the right track here. First of all, if it's implying that we're just wiping it before the retention period that's required either by regulation or even just internal company policy, that would not be good. We can't wipe data against a retention policy. For legal discovery, this actually does fall into the category of reducing liabilities. This is a legitimate reason for a business to want to have a strong data retention policy that includes a reasonable time frame for them to get rid of the data. The more data that I am responsible for, the more liability that I have. The bigger my profile is, the bigger my risk profile is. So we want to limit the amount of data that we have to just what we need. It's secure practice. It also is a good privacy practice as well. And then answer D, cost and data storage. It absolutely does reduce cost, but that's not the focus point that we have here. That gets emphasized throughout data retention, data encryption. Cost is not really a factor you can consider. From a business end, absolutely, but when you see cost as a possible option there, you can cross that off if it's related to there, unless it's obviously related. So great job on that. We are going to move on to the next question. Let's see, we had someone new join, and forgive me, I already forgot. Driss, yeah, welcome. So the way we're working this, on the next slide is another set of another practice question. I will be starting a timer on my phone for 50 seconds. So you have 50 seconds to just read through the question and submit the answer inside of a Google Meet poll. So it's in the bottom right-hand corner. There's the activities option. And within there, you'll see a poll that the poll will launch when I move on to the next slide here. And then we'll have an opportunity to discuss. Okay, are y'all doing good? Any questions before we go on to the next one? Okay. Off we go. 50 seconds. Excellent. And Nick, if you want to go ahead and submit your answer via the poll. Okay, time is up here. Good job. We got a little bit of a split vote. All right. Those are way more interesting. Okay, who's brave and wants to step up and tell me what keywords are important in this question for us? You don't even have to know the answer. Let's just look at keywords first. Yeah, Sarah, I'd love to hear from you.
I think the fact that it is being reused in an environment which is at the same sensitivity level. Absolutely.
Same sensitivity level. Okay, very important to have that. Anything else that stands out to you, Sarah?
Overwriting media.
Overwriting.
So, yeah.
Overwriting is a specific term for our field. And I would say reuse, I mean, it's obviously implied here, but just having in mind that we need to be able to reuse the media well. So, okay, I'm going to jump to the answer here and let's discuss it. So clearing, this, let's just pause here. This is a challenging question because a lot of these answers you could very easily justify. So let's just acknowledge at the beginning that some of you put answers I would also be inclined to put. And so we're going to walk through the reasoning that ISC2 has this. These are official practice questions. So let's walk through this. We discussed data clearing a little bit last week, I think. So someone tell me the definition of clearing. What is clearing? What are we doing to data?
Yeah, I'll say clearing is actually overwriting.
Yeah.
And And I just wanted to add the reason why I chose that, because this is a very good question. Very good question. I saw reuse, but at the same time, it's in the same sensitivity level. But that doesn't mean, well, because I dug deeper on this, I did a deep dive. If you're in the same security level, that doesn't mean that everyone in that security level should have the need to know that information. That makes sense. So that's why I chose clearing.
Yeah, that's great, Paul. Absolutely. So clearing, what is happening in the background is, well, first of all, actually, let me pause. Who can tell me the difference between clearing and erasing? Again, these are, if you were not in cybersecurity, or if you weren't studying for the CISSP, it would be easy to look at these. What the heck is the big deal? These look almost the exact same. But the definitions, as we get deeper and deeper, become more and more important. So who's got an idea on the distinction there?
I'm going to make a guess here.
Yeah.
Erasing is probably like a more thorough form of clearing. I
Okay.
guess using
can
multiple rounds of clearing. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. You're on the right track. You're thinking of purging on there. So clearing and purging. For clearing, we're going to overwrite on the data every little piece that's there. Purging is actually the exact same thing, but we're going to do multiple iterations of that. So we'll write over the data, we'll come back, we'll write over the data again, and then we'll write over the data again. So there's a handful of iterations of that. And this isn't an absolute rule, but purging usually includes an additional way of data destruction or data clearing. So you could degauss a drive after doing those rounds. Sometimes it can refer to destruction, but not always. The important thing on purging is it's multiple rounds of clearing plus something else that goes on as well. So that's purging. Erasing. This is, okay, does anyone else want to jump up and take a stab at erasing?
Yeah, I'll jump in there real quick.
Yeah.
Erasing to me is like the least, it's almost, it's a step down from deleting. As far as I understand it, erasing, you can recover the data real easy with erasing. And clearing is a much more stronger form of getting rid of data than erasing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. So the difference here is exactly like Paul was saying. So for erasing, what we're actually doing, we're not deleting the data, we're just forgetting where we put it, really. So you've heard the term like master boot record and things like that. You have partitions that know where, what sectors different data is being stored on your drive. And when you search for a file, it's going to check that record. It's the equivalent of you walk into the library and you look at all their index cards or their system to find out where something is in the library. When you erase something, and deleting is the same type of a term, when you hit delete on a file, this is what's happening in the background. You're forgetting where you put everything. It's still there. You can get everything back, but it takes a while to find it. Erasing, over time, if you erase something, it becomes harder to recover, because since we've forgotten where we put that file on the drive, we don't have any record of its location. Over time, that becomes assignable space on the drive. So data is naturally over time going to get written over the top of that. But clearing is the intentional process of going through and writing over the top of any data that was there. And yes, Sarah, it is the same as deleting files. Yeah, if you delete a file, you're just your computer's forgetting where you put it. It's still there, but yeah, forgetting where you put it. Versus clearing, we're writing over the top of it. Purging, we're going to write over the top of it multiple times and then do something else to it as well. So, okay, what relation do those first three terms here have to do with sanitization? What does sanitization really mean? There's a couple of really key concepts of sanitization that are important to this. None of you put it as an answer, so it didn't trick any of you, but I'm curious if anyone has confidence why they select B. Yeah, Rashawn, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the exact definition, but what I think is sanitization is not actually a technique of deleting or erasing a data, but it is a process which includes one or two or more of these practices.
Yes, very well done, Roshan. So he's exactly right. Sanitization itself is not a specific process. Sanitization is a term that includes things like purging. What sanitization is preparing media in such a way that none of the data on there could ever be recovered with a level of effort, and that it's prepared for reuse at a lower sensitivity level. So purging is one of the ways, as long as our extra method doesn't involve destruction, that we would prepare something for use at a lower sensitivity level. So purging could be a type of sanitization. It's not necessarily sanitization for purging, though. So it's kind of a subset. There's sanitization. Purging is one of those methods. Erasure, not sanitization. Clearing, also not sanitization. The data cannot be recovered, used at a lower sensitivity level. So keep those two things in mind for sanitization. Okay, I want to pause again because the most confusing answers here, if you understand erasing, yeah, shift delete could be a type of claim. I don't know what does shift delete do, Roshan? I don't know what the shift caveat does on that.
I don't know. Normally it says if you want to permanently delete the file.
Okay.
Shift delete the shortcut.
Yeah.
It's basically like clearing the recycle bin.
Okay.
So is that clear?
Yeah. I don't know the exact answer, so I'm going to tell you what my assumption is. So it's worth double checking this, but my assumption is no. When you empty the recycle bin, it's kind of the equivalent of, again, erasing that record. When you send something to the recycle bin, it's still easily recovered. Essentially, you're sending the location of that data on your drive to the recycling bin, so it's easily deletable, but you can come back to it. Chris looks like he had a thought. Chris, do you know the answer that we don't here? If you don't mind speaking up there. Well, if Chris is typing or something, let's clearing and purging. One of the confusing things, because I was inclined towards purging when I was looking at this practice question. But the reason from a managerial perspective why it's just a simple clear, just one override over everything, is same sensitivity level, and purging would be overkill in this sense. And same thing with sanitization. We don't need to go through that level of effort to prepare media for reuse. We've overwritten the media, making it difficult to recover. And like Paul said, they shouldn't have access to that data potentially. So that's why clearing is the answer.
Hey, Josh, real quick. Can you reemphasize sanitization again, how it differs from the others? Because
absolutely,
I know that sanitization kind of is like an umbrella for the rest. But what would make you choose sanitization in any other question over the others?
Great question. Okay, so let's look at what this question might be, or what changes to keywords we might see in this question, and sanitization would be the answer instead. So let's think about this. So the term used to describe overriding media, does that apply to sanitization? I would say that this is not strong enough. What term is used to describe maybe permanently erasing media or making data on media unrecoverable to allow for its reuse in an environment operating at a lower sensitivity level? So if the question were phrased like that, then sanitization might be. Is a term used to describe making data unrecoverable to allow for its reuse in an environment operating at the lower sensitivity level. In that case, sanitization would be a very safe answer. Purging might be the method that we would use to do that. So it kind of, again, depend on keywords. If we were to rephrase a question like that, then it would kind of be between purging and sanitization. Is it the specific method, purging, or is it that umbrella that, like you mentioned that term, that's a good term for it, of sanitization? Does that help clarify things, Paul?
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, anyone have any other questions before we move on to number 3? All right. Let's see here. I'm going to pop up the slide. Timer is going, and poll is launched. Go ahead, gang. Y'all are doing great. Good job. Couple more seconds. All right. And the poll here. Wow, you guys are doing awesome. Holy cow. Well done. Everyone, you got the question right here. So we'll go through it briefly here. What does data labeling allow a DLP system to do? Okay, let's pause here. Data labeling. What are we, when we are labeling data, what are we trying to communicate about that data? What is labeling? Someone unpack that for us. Yeah, Chris, I'd love to hear from you.
It's a way of classifying what type of data it is, whether it needs to be kept private or what restrictions should be placed on the data.
Yeah, bingo. That's exactly right. Data labeling is a way to communicate the data classification or categorization. So a company will have a policy for a data classification scheme, and we have a couple questions that go into that a little bit more. But data classification scheme, and then we need to label our data so people actually know what it is. So if you get an email that has internal sensitive information, it communicates that to you right up front. If you print a document, that's labeled right up front. So data labeling, great job, Chris. So, okay. DLP systems. Do we have Cheryl on the call? Let me just, okay. Some of you know Cheryl. She's a really active member of our group. She works with data loss prevention systems. So she was able on Tuesday to kind of fill us in a little bit on this. So I'll give you a couple little snippets from what she had mentioned. So when we have data labeling and data classification, we can make configuration changes on DLP systems so that they know what to do when they encounter a certain data classification scheme. So if I'm trying to send an email that has critical information and I'm trying to send it outside of my organization, DLP can have a rule in there to stop me from doing that, or at least give me a warning or something like that. So it can detect what the label is and then take action depending on what you have told what actions it can take. So DLP systems don't change the labels and they don't change the classification scheme. They don't change them directly. Policy or administrators do, and they might do it on the system itself, but this is an administrative or a configuration change. Now, just don't remember this for the exam, but Cheryl had mentioned this is actually something that's kind of being worked on right now, just with the ability to see inside of data, of making sure that it's classified the way that it should be. So it's not notifying the firewall that traffic should be allowed through. Let me pause. Oh, first, and it's not going to delete unlabeled data. We don't want to just delete data. That's a dangerous thing unless it's in alignment with our retention policy. So letter C. There's a word that comes to my mind. It's not related to the question at all. Step back from the question. There's a word that just pops into my head when I'm reading through that question. Does anyone else have something like that? Some technical concept or something that makes, boy, that question kind of, or that answer sounds like this.
Access control list.
Could be access control. Yeah, who else has a thought?
Can you repeat your question, Josh?
Yeah, when I read this response here, there's a couple of terms that come to my mind, that spring to my mind pretty quickly. I'm curious if anyone else does. There's no right or wrong answer to this. I'm curious if you read an answer and you want to try and link terms to it sometimes. Are there terms that come to mind with that?
Oh, is it IPS?
Could be, yeah.
Intelligent Prevention System.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that comes to my mind is the concept of stateful versus stateless. It notifies the firewall that it should be allowed to go through and maybe come back to. So sometimes they will put answers there, and this might not be a great example here, and it came pretty strongly to my mind, but in other responses you're going to come up to, you're going to see an answer option, and it's going to try to lead you in a specific direction. And it could be the right direction, it also could be a mislead. So just something to keep in mind. If you have a term that really makes sense come to your mind, then just be aware of that. So, okay, we're going to, yeah.
Before we jump, another big question here. I'm going to tell you, I was torn between A and B, but I chose A. Are you saying that DLP systems forever and a day cannot make changes? Because I thought I read somewhere in the OSG that it can make some type of adjustment.
The adjustments that DLP will make are based on the configurations. So again, this is a technology that is exploding right now. So there might be information that we are inclined to be aware of that aren't officially on the exam yet. So detecting labels and taking action, kind of like intrusion prevention in a little bit of a way, but it's data loss instead of intrusion prevention. We can take some type of an action, but there has to be a configuration telling us what to take. But again, this from what we had a good discussion from this on Tuesday, because Cheryl was able to kind of help us understand what within answer B was correct right now versus what is actually going to be on the exam.
I'm kind of mad I missed that. But real quick, because if you look at B, it says, well, the correct answer A, I mean, it's making changes there. It says, well, it's applying appropriate protection. So to me, that's like making a change to some degree.
It does seem like that. And that's a tricky thing in the language here, based on changes in the classification scheme. So if we make a change in the classification scheme, that's take place at the policy level. We're changing the classification scheme. That's something that's going to trickle down, and we now have to relabel everything. The DLP isn't going to know how to do that until we configure it too. So that's where the change is taking place here at the administrative level and the strategic level, versus here we're applying appropriate protections. This is more at the, you've heard me talk about strategic, tactical, and operational. This is more of a tactical or operational thing that's actually happening. It's detecting and applying at the system level, versus this is more going up to that policy or strategic level.
All right, thanks.
Does that kind of help, Paul?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Awesome. Let's jump on to question 4. Let me get my polls back up here. Okay, timer is started. Go ahead.
Oh, we got a gimme here, huh?
A little bit of a gimme, yeah. That's all right. You guys are nailing these today, by the way. I don't want to speak ill of the Tuesday class, but you guys are doing a little bit better. Oops. Okay, I'm going to cut off our timer here a little early because you guys are all nailing this. Well done. Data stored on a hard drive is exactly right. It's at rest. We're not doing anything with it. It's sitting there. We have data at rest. What are 2 other types of data states? Transit. Yeah, data in transit. Thank you, Driss. There's one more that I'd like to hear. We don't think of it as often. In use. Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Sarah and Marianne. Excellent. Yeah, nice work, John. So data in use. So let's just walk through this. Data in an IPsec tunnel. It's moving around. We're in a tunnel and traffic is going back and forth. This is, excuse me, data in transit, not use. Data in e-commerce transaction. We don't know enough about this from the question because there's likely all 3 data types in play. There's maybe some database that's being queried. That would be an example of data in use. There might be customer information that's getting transmitted. That'd be data in transit. And there might be an actual product, product that could be data in at rest until it's put to use. So data stored in RAM. In forensic terminology, what is RAM? What type of data is that? That's not related to the question. I'm curious if someone has that term ready. What type of data? Volatile. Yeah, that's exactly right. This is volatile data. So this isn't a forensics question, but it's just nice to have these terms and we can cover them as we come up against them. But when we're doing forensic operations, volatile data is the first thing that we need to go after, because if we have a system state change, then that data could be lost forever. So this would be more of a forensics type answer. None of you fell for it, but yeah. Okay, great job. Let's go ahead and...
Quick question. I'm sorry I keep...
I love it, Paul. I love your questions.
This is some clarification. Like on my practice questions and practice exam questions, this is related here. If you have a computer that's, say, infected, but you don't know what the details are yet, on a network. A lot of the questions I'm getting is making you lean towards leaving the computer on versus turning it off.
Yes.
You know, to preserve, you know, stuff for investigations or what have you. In what scenario is it okay to turn it off so it's not causing more harm? Like, when do you make the decision to turn it off versus leaving it on?
That's a great question, Paul. And just to take a step back, this is from a professional experience. This is a question on the CISSP would be a little bit more difficult to answer with this because it's more of a judgment call. Most of the time I would incline towards not turning the machine off because I would like to have that data and recovery operation. So I would unplug the network cable and get it disconnected from the network right away. For turning the machine off, I would need a reason to do so, and I can't think of a reason offhand. Chris, you raised your hand. Do you have some input for us here?
No, you just touched on it. I would have thought the first thing was isolate the machine. So
Yeah.
disconnecting the network cable and just making sure it's isolated from other devices.
Yeah, that's I would fall in that. I'm not saying there's no case where you would want to turn the power off. I would say it's much more common to just disconnect it from the network. That way you still have that data because it's going to happen again if you don't know what happened. Yeah, Sarah, you had something to add here?
Yes, I wanted to add to that. Yes, we have to isolate the machine. That point has already been brought up. And another thing is that we're not turning it off because we want to get access to all the data we can possibly get in order to find the root cause of what actually caused the problem in the first place. Because if we turn it off, we might lose the data in the volatile memory or so yeah, that's why we have to leave it on until we have got all the information that we need extracted, and then we can send it for you can say like clearing and restoration back to the state that it can be brought back.
All good points. And I might be reaching here, but I'm just thinking of a scenario, say if it's on a wireless network, you know, of course you disable the Wi-Fi or whatever, but what if it's an important computer that, I don't know, maybe a database or something, and it's causing a meltdown locally on that machine? Would you still like leave it on?
Yeah. Again, good question, Paul. And these are kind of judgment calls. I would still be inclined to leave it on, even if it would be doing some damage. One of the things that you have to be careful about is this is the concept of like scareware, sort of. If something could be looking like it's really bad, and it might actually be really bad. But if you're being infected, that's one of the tactics that people will use. I want to confuse whatever is going on. And one of the ways is they can have a real attack and have something going on over the top of that that's fake. Rebooting a machine is one of the ways you can let an APT into your system. Who's got that acronym off the top of their head? APT.
Something persistent threat.
Advanced persistent threat.
Exactly. So that's another reason we avoid powering off or rebooting the machine. Is that's one way they can get a foothold into your system. You can still get them out, but it just helps them get persistence. Annette, did you have something to add here?
Yeah. So ultimately, the call will be made by management, right? By senior manager.
Yeah, ultimately the call would be made by managers. You would have an incident response policy that would include what would you do as a technician if you see these sort of things going on. If you see the term is, okay, this may be a little bit harder, IOC. Anyone got that one off the top of their head? IOC.
Compromission indeed.
Compromise, I think.
Indicator of compromise. Yeah, perfect. So that would, if we see an indicator of compromise, what do we do with that indicator? What action do we take? So that's a level of detail we're going to go on now. Just for the sake of time, we're going to move on to the next question here. Paul, I love your questions. Thank you for continuing to ask them. It adds a lot to our discussion. Never hesitate from that, please.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right. Next question, and timer is started. Go ahead, gang. This one is a tricky one, I think. A few more seconds. All right. Nicely done. Nicely done. We got another split answer, which is great. Those are my favorite. Cool. So the primary information security risk to data at rest. Primary is the key word here. The CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. I know that those terms aren't really used in this question, but that acronym, those three concepts are the core of what we do as cybersecurity professionals. And for the CISSP exam, they recognize that. And of those three, confidentiality is the biggest one. That's not true all the time, but if I'm going to generalize, our job is confidentiality. We can help with integrity with backups. That's fairly easy to handle. So integrity is vital, but it's a lot easier than confidentiality. Availability, exact same thing. We could have redundant architecture, redundant data, redundant sites. So it absolutely is critical that we have availability, but we need confidentiality. That was the key thing that helped me understand the answer to this question. So with that in mind, let's move forward. Data breach is the correct answer. The reason for that is we can't recover from a data breach. There is recovery that we can do, but we can never fully recover. The breach has already happened. The rest of these we can recover from to some degree, or it's a reduced risk. So improper classification, there's absolutely a risk associated with this. If you label something as public data and it's got sensitive data, there's a security risk there. But the impact is minimalized, it's localized there, and we can rectify classification schemes. Plus, we don't know necessarily what type of data is being classified. It's not specified in here. Maybe I labeled it at a higher sensitivity level than it was. Well, there's not really an information security risk there. It's just some administrative overhead. So data breach is critical. Decryption, yeah, we don't want our data being decrypted because that would violate confidentiality, but this isn't the biggest risk that we have. This is more of a technique, could be a good thing. Loss of data integrity, again, absolutely critical, but we're security professionals who always have our things backed up. So data breach is what I want you to think of. If you're not sure on an answer, you can take a step back and think about, what is my job as a security professional? What do they want me to focus on? We do not want a data breach. So great job on that. Just for the sake of time, guys, I'm going to keep moving through a couple of these questions. So if you have a question that you'd really like to ask or go over, then please raise your hand. But I would love for us to be able to get to some of these bonus questions. So with you guys' permission, I'm going to move on to the next
I just want to quickly add one thing.
Yeah.
Even though I chose A, but yes, now that you have explained, I agree with you that it's B. And also somebody mentioned this tip as well, that we're looking for an answer that encompasses like all the other options. Since you mentioned CIA, so data breach can lead to loss of all three of them. So yes, yeah, it is correct.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, Sarah. Okay, here we go with question 6. Timer has started. Go ahead. Y'all are doing a great job, by the way. Really proud of you guys for participating and answering. If it's any encouragement to y'all, I definitely would have been guessing on the exam for this one. Anything with the, I don't even know, the Bella Padula, any of those models, I also would have been guessing with those. There's a handful. That's okay. You guys are doing better than I would have. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here. The majority got it right. It is Poodle. So I'm going to put a couple of these acronyms in the chat for us here. But while I am doing that, is anyone feeling really confident in their answer that could explain it to us? Because chances are you're going to do a better job explaining it than I do. Lucky guess. That's okay. Lucky guesses are they still count. All right, so let's walk through this. I'm going to come back to Poodle. Stuxnet. Who's got 1 to 2 keywords they can throw out about what Stuxnet is? Stuxnet is probably the clearest one of any of these. It's easiest to remember.
Yes, I think it was
Cyber attack,
yeah, against some probably like Iran's a
Yes.
new program or something. Yeah, it was like a very sophisticated attack which involved use of different kinds of malware.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
kind of like
really,
sorry.
I'd encourage you, if you are interested, to go look up a YouTube video on Stuxnet, because it is. Sarah nailed it for us. This is an attack. It was a worm that, my understanding of it is, the United States built it specifically to destroy an Iranian nuclear facility. They released this worm in the hopes that they could get their centrifuge to spin out of control and start destroying things. And so yeah, and Roshan put in the chat that it was OT, operational technology. Some other terms you might hear surrounding this are let's see, integrated control system. No, who's got the word I'm thinking of? Industrial control system, ICS. Things like that. These are, Paul. Yeah, do you have the term I'm thinking of?
Oh no, I was just saying. Just wanted to add that when I read up on Stuxnet, what was interesting to me is the way that the U.S. integrated it into the system. They weren't even local on site. They used some kind of thing from a distance and got it embedded in their network somehow. I'm like, wow, that's some sci-fi stuff right there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So interesting one here. All you need to remember whenever you see Stuxnet is it's an attack against the Iranian nuclear facility using a worm. Iranian nuke facility with a worm. Those are the 3 things. If you remember that, you'll get any question on the CISSP right with this. So, okay, let's look at beast and crime. If you've been around, you've heard one of my tips for an exam of the night before and the day of, review your acronyms. And the reason is that if you know the acronym, what it really means, sometimes that's enough to answer the question. That's not always the case, but it can also be helpful for elimination as well. So I usually cram on my acronyms right beforehand, because also in the question, sometimes you have questions that it's obvious it was meant to test your understanding of what an acronym means. If you don't know the acronym, you won't understand the question or the answers. So this isn't a great example of that, but it's an example. So BEAST, a browser exploit against SSL and TLS. What you can keep in mind for BEAST is that it was an attack against how TLS was functioning. Where are my notes on this? It allowed them to decrypt some data on an earlier TLS setting. So this actually has less to do with SSL and more with an attack against TLS. So that's BEAST. Crime is the compression ratio info leak made easy. Essentially, this was an issue again with TLS about how data was being compressed. There was data leakage happening in compression. So Poodle, jumping up to the top here, this is a vulnerability in SSL version 3.0, and it ultimately did prompt the upgrade to TLS, but it led to cookies being unencrypted. So when you have cookies that are clear text, it's easy to do things like session replay attacks, session hijacking, man in the middle if you want. So Poodle was the main prompter to move towards TLS. So I'm not going to go deeper into that because my knowledge has been tapped on those topics, as I mentioned. So, all right, we're going to move on to question 7 here. Go ahead. All right, let's get some answers in. Just a few more seconds. Okay. Nicely done. I'm going to end the poll here and show you guys the results. Okay, excellent. Most of you guys got it right here. We're preventing sensitive media from accidentally not getting marked. That's one of the critical components here. So the reason that we mark all of our media, if we're using a classification scheme, which we should be, if I come across a USB that doesn't have a data label, how do I know anything about that? Did we forget to label sensitive data? Does it even belong to us? Has it just not been labeled yet? That's another critical thing. So exactly right. This is a preventative control, making sure data is labeled properly. Cheaper, again, I've mentioned cost and things like this do not mix well in the answers or in the exam. In reality, they do because we need to make cost-effective decisions, but that's not the scope of the exam. Prevents reuse. We could reuse the media. There's processes to do that, but that's not the focus of this. Labeling all media. I looked this up because I was curious. It's not actually required by HIPAA to label all media. You have to have different flags on data containing PHI. Who's got that acronym? PHI off the top of their head.
Personal health information.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Paul. All right, nicely done. We're going to move on to the next question here. Go ahead. Keep it up, guys. So I know Cliff had mentioned he did not see any of the NIST special publications listed in his exam. I remember distinctly having them in my exam, and I want you to be comfortable seeing them if you don't know what they are. You're just not going to know all of them. There's a couple that are worth knowing, but there are far more that aren't worth your time to invest in memorizing them. Okay. There we go. I want to grab a link for you guys real quick. Link that actually. Okay, I'm going to put a link in the chat. This is actually to the NIST special publication. Okay, NIST special publications are not good study material for the exam. They are good if you are struggling a lot with a specific concept and want to excel at it. This is where ISC2 will get a lot of their source definitions for terms. So if you're struggling with something, go find the NIST special publication and poke through it and see if there's something that might answer your question. So there's a link if you're curious about that. All right, what does this do? Let me go back to my poll. I don't think I actually did a poll, so you guys can see how y'all did. Okay, nice. We got a split vote here. Good job. Okay, which of the following? All right, who wants to play the keyword game? Tell me what keywords you see that you like in here.
Not performed.
Not. That is the biggest one you need. And system. Marion caught the other one. Beautiful. We need those two words. Yeah, Sarah, did you have another one?
System owner.
Yeah, system owner. Exactly. If you have those two words, you can pretty much answer this question. So let's walk through what it is. It is established rules for appropriate use and protection of data. That's the key word in this answer. We're looking at system owner. This is a data owner that does this. So that's why this is the not answer. NIST special publication is, the title of that is Guide for Developing Security Plans for Federal Information Systems. So for those of you not in the US, NIST is really common for the US government to use. It's adapted as kind of a general standard. And it is used globally a lot too, but it's more focused for the US government. It does all of these other things, though, of making sure that people are being trained on it. They know what controls to use and how to implement them. And all of this is a part of a system security plan. Okay, let's jump to question 9. We're doing okay.
I'm sorry, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to raise my hand, but so the system owner does implementation?
That's a good call out. That's a really good call out. Yes and no. He won't. This caught me off guard. The word implements too, because the system owner will identify the security controls, but they won't necessarily be the one implementing them.
That's why I chose C. It kind of keep me. Yeah.
That would be a system custodian, could be that, or a system administrator is probably more likely there. So I'm glad you called that out, Paul, because this threw me off a little bit too. They shouldn't be the one implementing. So that's where we would jump to the system owner. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying since we're looking for the best answer, because even I read too much into option C because of the word implement. I'm like, oh yeah, the system owner does no implementation, and I missed the word data in option B. So when we're looking for the best option out of all these four of these, then yeah, we can clearly see that the system owner might participate in implementation of security controls on a system, but B is definitely, it comes nowhere like close.
That's a great way to put that, Sarah. This is the best answer that we have. And this would, if this answer weren't here, this would probably be a pretty good one too, because then they were challenging you instead of the system keyword, challenging you on the owner keyword.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, great call, Paul. Okay. Yeah, Annette, do you have a question?
Yeah, and it's easy, like in the exam, it's easy to read over that. Like instead of, I'm not, even dismissing system and just looking at owner right away and then picking the wrong answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Keywords are really, really important. I know Rakesh had mentioned that as well. That's something I emphasize. Keywords will make or break your exam sometimes. They can make all the difference. Okay. Question 9. Here we go. Okay, got a few seconds left. All right. Nicely done. Nicely done. We got a little bit of a split poll. Disintegration is our correct answer. Let's walk through this together. So what are our keywords? Who's got a couple keywords for us?
Best.
Best. Great keyword. What's another one?
Sanitize.
Sanitize. Yeah, and SSD. Exactly. Those are our keywords that we want to focus on here. So we discussed that sanitization is that umbrella term for making sure that data is unrecoverable. And we're preparing that media potentially for reuse at a lower environments. This can include destruction. I don't know if we chatted about that on the last one, but sanitization can also just mean destruction because the data, again, is irrecoverable. So that, I don't think I had mentioned that when we had our sanitization style question earlier, that sanitization can also include destruction as one of those methods. Yeah, Sarah, do you have a question?
If we destroy it, then how can we reuse it?
Yes, great question. So this was my mistake on one of the earlier questions that we had. If sanitization is the umbrella and we're looking at the different methods, we also have different outcomes from those. So one of the outcomes of sanitization is reusing that media at a lower classification or lower data categorization level. The other thing that we could do with sanitization is just complete destruction. The main principle of sanitization is that data is unrecoverable. It's impossible to recover it regardless of what type of level of effort you put into it. So we can do that either through techniques like purging, or we can do it through techniques like the correct answer here, disintegration. We're destroying that, so it's the data is unrecoverable, even if the media isn't reusable. So that was my fault for not distinguishing the two different types of outcomes of sanitization, Sarah. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we talked about clearing. Not sufficient. We're just overriding over the data with one line. Zero fill. Who wants to tell me what a zero fill is? Yeah, Roshan, love to hear from you, buddy.
Not 100% sure, but I think it's a technique where all the bits are converted into 0 bits.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Beautifully done. Zero fill is a type of clearing. We are going to write over all of our data with zeros. So it's whatever it is, and we're going to write over it with zeros. Zero fill is one type of clearing. We can do a one fill if we want. We could do an alternating fill. Another technique is to take data, just random data, and write that over the top. So a zero fill is just one technique that clearing would have, a specific way to accomplish that. So purging is not one of the responses on here, but when we're doing purging, we might mix these. We might do a zero fill, then we might do a one fill, then we might alternate. We're making that original data harder and harder to identify. So that's, I mean, an example of purging there using multiple of these. Degaussing. Why won't degaussing help us sanitize an SSD?
Because it works only in magnetic tape or magnetic hard drives.
Perfect. One of the big upgrades from SSDs, among the many, is that magnetization will not destroy the data. The components are built a little bit differently. So degaussing and SSDs don't mix. You're just kind of waving a magic wand over the top of it, and it doesn't actually do anything. Okay, we got another question here. You guys are doing great. We're doing okay on time. Nicely done. Okay.
Chris,
Oh, yeah.
I typed a question in the chat.
Let me chat here. Alternating fill. Alternating, yeah, thank you for asking. So if we do a zero fill, we're writing over with all zeros. A one fill, we're doing all ones. Alternating would be, I'm going to do a 1, then a 0, then a 1, and just go back and forth across that whole data set. So we're just alternating. No. All right. All right. Question is launched. Oh, you guys are all getting this one right. All right, I'm going to cut us off a couple seconds early because you guys are doing great. Y'all got it right. Scoping, that's what we're doing here. Here's some of the key things that we want to focus on here. I'm going to walk us through. So we're reviewing the baseline security controls. It's implied that we might already have the controls picked out. So we have our baseline controls, and we're selecting the controls that are appropriate for the system. This is really key for scoping. You already have a set of controls, a set of requirements that have been chosen. But what do we actually do with those on this specific system? What is applicable? What is in scope for us to actually do? So you guys all nailed that. Baselining refers to either two things depending on how it's used. It either refers to selecting a baseline that you're going to use for an organization, which they have already done here. They've selected a baseline, or it refers to actually upgrading or hardening your systems to meet that baseline. So it can either be selecting the baseline or getting to the baseline. CIS benchmarks, I'm going to show this to you guys real quick. Don't go into this for the chat, but you guys know I kind of like to look at some real stuff every now and then. So these Center for Internet Security, CIS, publishes some wonderful benchmarks on systems that we can use. We can take those controls, look at our system, and see what makes sense. They have so many of these, and they're enormous. Okay, I'm just going to open one. We don't have time for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. They have a standard. I use a pfSense firewall. It's just an operating system that we can use. And it's 90 pages long. And what CIS has done is they've helped me pick out the best configuration, the most secure configuration for that system. I won't use all the controls, but I can make sure that there's No allow rule with any services present. You guys can read that. Helpful information. If you're working in your job and you don't know how to harden a system, CIS benchmarks is going to give you a great place to start from. Okay, so y'all did great there. Paul, yeah, you got a question for us?
Yeah, I was having a hard time since studying, which has been a long time, differentiating between scoping and tailoring. If tailoring was in this, how would you differentiate between tailoring and scoping?
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to give you my answer here, and I'll caveat it with saying I have about an 80% confidence rating on the way I'm going to line it up for you here. So it's still studying. Scoping takes place before tailoring. So let's walk through this. We've selected our baseline security controls that we want to implement. We might have gotten those from a benchmark. We might have gotten those from a compliance standard, but we have a set of controls. Now we're going to look at a system. What controls are specific to a system that we want to do? What's in scope? Okay, now we have a new set of controls. It's a subset of our entire list, but we have a set of controls that are scoped for one particular system. Now we do the tailoring. The tailoring is taking those controls and seeing how is this actually going to look in reality. So you've heard me use the STO, strategic, tactical, and operational. It's kind of like that. When we're baselining or establishing a baseline, we're looking at the strategic level and what is applicable to our organization. Scoping takes it down to the tactical level. What is applicable to this system? And tailoring, again, this is a 80% confidence. What is actually applicable in reality based on our company, the system, and how it's used? So I would refresh yourself on those concepts just to make sure my understanding of those is correct. Let me know if you find something that's inaccurate there. Sarah, do you have something to add there? Yeah.
Yes, I do want to add just a little bit to that, since this was a topic I was covering like a couple of weeks ago, so I still have some vague memory of what the difference was between the two. So in scope, so basically when you select a baseline, it has like a list of controls. In scoping, you choose the ones that are applicable to your environment. So that is like a subset of the entire baseline control set. With tailoring, you're not going to omit any controls. You have to pick all the controls, but you can modify them according to your environment. However, you can make them more secure, not kind of like make them less secure. For example, if a baseline is saying that your minimum password length should be, let's say, 8 characters, you feel like my environment requires more security, so I'm going to set a password for 10 characters. That does not mean that you choose like 1 for 7. So basically, this is what tailoring is, that you pick all the baseline controls, but you make some modifications to make it more suitable for your environment.
That's a great call out, Sarah. I'm not sure I'm going to get these terms exactly correct, but the principle behind them is you have a set of mandatory controls that are established by regulatory requirements, policy, any number of things. Then you have discretionary requirements. It sounds like those might come out of tailoring of, okay, yeah, this is what we have to do. What else should we do that just makes sense for our environment? So, okay, great job. We are doing 2 bonus questions. I know we're coming up on time, so I just want to pause here because we got 3 minutes left in the scheduled time. If you have to go afterwards, go ahead. You can just drop off the call. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm sorry we're going to go a little bit over here today. But these questions, the last 2 that we're going to go over, I'm not going to give you the question until we actually go into the discussion round. So I'm just going to give you the answers. The poll also will just have the answers in there. And these are techniques, thinking techniques that you can use during the test to help you eliminate answers. This is a game of odds. This is not perfect. So when I present these questions, I'm not even giving you the question. I'm giving you the answers. So you're taking your best approximate guess. And there's techniques you can do to raise your odds. So I'm going to give you the question. Take some time, think through it. Don't get frustrated with yourself. The scenario you're being put in is you don't understand the test question at all, but you still want to answer it and give it your best shot. So we're going to take this the exact same way as any of the others. So again, if you have to hop off, no problem. I really appreciate you guys being in here. Reach out on the school platform if you have any questions or want any of these, just reach out. Okay. With that said, here we go. Oh man, I love these questions. I don't know if you guys like them, but I think they're cool. Poll launched. Okay, 10 seconds left. Just put your best guess in there. Okay, get a couple more votes in there. We only got 4 of you that pitched answers out. You can get a couple more. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right. There we go. Who wants to take a stab at this? How the heck are you supposed to know the answer to this? First of all, these are real test questions. I haven't altered a single word, and I will give you the question here in a moment. But who's got a stab at why did you pick the answer you did? Yeah, Sarah.
Okay, the first part is the attack, and the second is how you're going to prevent that from happening. I mean, that is how I read the question.
Yeah. The principle of the question is exactly right. There's a type of attack, and there's some type of a prevention or control there. Marion, did I see you raise your hand? You might have put something in the chat. I don't always watch the chat.
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood the idea of this test, and I was thinking we had to provide the question.
Oh,
but not the right answer. Sorry.
Here, I'll move one slide forward real quick, and I'm going to give you guys the question here. So take a moment, read through the question, and I've already locked in the poll here, but see if you would change your answer now. And then we'll walk through how the heck would you get the correct answer without knowing the question. So we're at a bank. That may or may not be important. We're ensuring transactions are secure as they traverse the network. So we might need to know that we're working with data in transit. Recommends that transactions use TLS. What threats, which you guys already identified, there's some threat, and what method is she using to protect it. So you guys, without even seeing the question, you understood what the question was asking just by looking at the answers. So you picked up on that very, very well. Let's talk about why the answer is actually sniffing and encryption. So, I mean, now that you see the question, this might make sense, but let's talk about, I'm not going to focus on the content of the question. Let's pause there. We're not going to focus on studying. We're going to focus on our test taking skills for these. So why is it sniffing and encryption? We need to think like a test writer when we're doing this. Test writers are human. They make mistakes, and they have processes that they might use. If we can understand the common mistakes and the processes that they likely used when they're crafting their questions and answers, that's why we look at keywords, and we can raise our odds in getting the correct answer. So just looking at the answers here, what 2 terms did the author of the question want to make sure that were in there and that you didn't miss and might trick you up? What 2 terms within the 4 questions or the 4 answered responses? We've got sniffing listed twice, and we have encryption listed twice on here. None of these other terms are listed more than once. So let's pause, think like a test writer. I wrote this question, and I know the answer I want to put is sniffing and encryption. Well, I can't just put sniffing and encryption. I need to trick up these test takers somehow. So I'm going to make sure sniffing isn't another answer to make sure if someone sees that, they might get excited and click it. I'm going to put encryption in another answer too, but there's only one place they show up in the same spot. So again, this is the technique. It's not absolute, but focus on what the test writer wants you to notice. It's the same thing we're doing in the questions. We're looking for keywords. We're going to look at the answers, and we're going to look for keywords or process mistakes that we can take advantage of. So we last week had the concept of one of these things is not like the other. This is more of a, what did the test writer want to make sure you saw or make sure you didn't miss? So does anyone have questions on how I came to that conclusion there? Again, these are not absolute principles. These are techniques that you can have in your tool belt for when you don't understand a question.
Yeah, I got it now that you explained it. But one quick question. Does TLS only protect against sniffing?
No, TLS protects against quite a lot of other things here.
No, I'm talking about with the answers up there. Does it protect against packet injection and man in the middle?
Yeah, this would protect against packet injection and man in the middle. Yep.
Yeah.
Encryption is what we can do within that. What TLS encrypts the packet and everything that's going on within it so that sniffing is not possible. Packet injection would be difficult if it's encrypted because we would have to use the same encryption algorithm and probably know the counter that's going on behind the scenes. Man in the middle could be what happens, and there could be a VPN with TLS. We don't know for sure. There's not enough information. Who knows what Tempest is offhand?
It's that protection against emanation that the military uses.
Yeah, Tempest is, it's some incredible attacks, but you can think of it like seeing through walls to capture information. This is an attack where you see through walls, basically. So great job on that. These are hard questions, and they're meant to be really challenging. Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, Josh, can you explain that rationale behind selecting C without reading the question? I did not get that. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's go back here so we don't even see the question as a distraction. Okay. I don't understand whatever question they asked me. So I'm looking only at the answers. Here it happens to be very static. They're giving me 2 terms for every one. Just looking them over, I'm doing almost like a frequency analysis. What terms does the test writer really want to emphasize? What terms were important to the test writer? This is probably the answer that came up first, and they wanted to try and trick you as a test taker. So they're going to sneak these other options into others. So we have sniffing and encryption, sharing and response. Here we have sniffing and Tempest. It's almost correct, but it's not. They're trying to trick you. Same thing here. It's almost correct, but it's not. Trying to trick you. So looking at the frequency, this is where those 2 terms align within an answer. So again, Sarah, this is not absolute. These are different techniques that you can use during a test, but that's how I got there, is just basically a frequency analysis. What is really important to the test writer in these answers?
Right, because sniffing was mentioned in 2 options. That is why we were looking more into that.
Sniffing is
Right.
in 2 options, and encryption is in 2 options here. Where are they together? Yeah. Okay, so we have one more question. We're going to launch here, and this gets even worse, guys. Even worse, if you can believe it. I'm going to give you no question, and I'm only going to give you the first word of every answer. This, I'll be just blunt right up front. This is going to be a little bit more challenging to those of you who English is a second language. That's just a reality of where you guys are. So the key word, or what I want you to take into this question when I release it, I would like you to pick one of the words and craft a sentence around it. It does not matter what the sentence is. And then without changing anything about that sentence, I want you to go through the rest of the answers and try and plug them into the sentence. Just see how it sounds. You're trying all of them in the exact same scenario, and we're looking for the principle of one of these things is not like the other, but we're going to look at it at a different level than a technical level. So I'm going to launch this here. Take your best guess at it, see what makes sense, and then we'll go over the justification for why you might be able to figure out the answer to this question with no question, and you don't even really get the answers. And I said English is a second language. People might have a harder time. In my experience, I was a linguist when I was in the military. Some of you actually might have a better time answering this because a lot of times you have more formal study of English and understand concepts better than native English speakers who don't have to study it. So you've taken it intentionally. So it's not necessarily more or less challenging. Y'all are doing great. I'm impressed. Okay, get your answer in here real quick. I can't believe it, you guys. You guys are amazing. The majority of you got it correct. It's established. How the heck did you know it was established? Someone tell me. Yeah, Sarah.
I think that's a pretty like silly reason, but that's in past tense. That's why I picked it. Even though you're not
right. It's not a silly reason. The test writer.
Oh, is it that reason?
It is. You're exactly right. It's established. You guys are all exactly right. It's established. And the way you would pick this is exactly like Sarah said. It's past tense. It's so silly. We don't know the question. We don't even know the answer. But we were able to look at this and say, one of these things is not like the other. The test writer will probably have the answer correct right there. Establish rules. This is a question we already went through, by the way. We went through this question in question 8. And most of you guys got it right there too. So they had this picked out already as what the correct answer is. And then they went back and picked out 3 wrong answers, and they didn't check their tense. Or yeah, and that's all it was. That's all we needed right there to answer that question. So there are other ways, even if you don't understand a single word in there, if you just take your time and look for mistakes, look for how the test writer was thinking, you can still find the right answers. I'm so impressed with you guys. The majority of you got that you got the correct answer without the answers and without the question. That's just amazing. So you guys are going to crush this speed when you guys get there. I got to make it more challenging for you. So that's the end of our time here today. I really appreciate you guys being here. Keep studying. You're doing a great job. People are passing left and right. Continue engaging in the community. I'm going to put the link I already put the link in the chat for submitting practice questions. That, if you want to do anything for us, that would probably be my favorite thing. If you sent me practice questions that you really found valuable or especially challenging, I would much rather go over those in these sessions than the questions that I select out of here. So again, thank you. Keep it up.
Josh, real quick.
Yeah.
For subject matter, is it okay? I'm not sure what you're doing in the next session next week, but at some point, can we cover the differences between the frameworks like COBIT, when to use COBIT versus 27001 and CSF, and how to distinguish, because I'm having a very hard time on my exam questions selecting and differentiating between these different frameworks.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm jotting that down here, Paul.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's a lot of them, and some of them are real close, and
there are. Yeah. Okay, great. I've got that jotted down on my list here, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks.
Terry, you had your hand raised as well?
Yes. Josh, I want to ask that since there are so many NIST publications and it's just not easy for us to remember all of them, what they contain. And then it's also not clear to what level of depth are they expecting us to have knowledge on those for the exam. If somebody can guide us on that, I think that would actually be really helpful.
Sure. Yeah. We can do something on NIST publications. I think that's a great idea. I will just say offhand, and you can jot this down right now, if you were to only know one NIST special publication, and you could literally just read the title, maybe ask ChatGPT, explain NIST, I'll put it in the chat right now, NIST SP 800-53. That's one that's worth knowing. These aren't directly related, but ISO 27 or ISO/IEC.
Is that the risk management framework 53?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So those are some of the more important ones. But yeah, I'll do some research and see what we might want to go into more depth on, Sarah. That's a great question. Yeah. Anyone else have any final questions before we close out? Thanks for your patience. I know we're about 15 minutes over time, so good job hanging in there.
Thank you, Josh.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for being here, Marion. I really enjoy being here with all of you. You're engaging so well. You're really showing up. You're studying hard. I'm just proud of you guys. So hope to see you guys either in our next Tuesday session or next Thursday. Send me questions.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.